This is the Amp Hour Podcast, recorded June 2nd, 2014. Episode 201, Multiscience, Mercenary, Marketplace.
Welcome to the Amp Hour. I'm Dave Jones from the EEV blog.
And I'm Chris Gamble of Contextual Electronics.
What's up, nerd?
Hey, man. Welcome to the world of living after, a short delay this morning.
Well, yeah, you called my home.
I did.
and you got my wife
I
picked
talked
up.
to Mrs. EEV blog, and she was confused, to say the least.
I was going to say, lucky you didn't. Lucky she didn't hang up on you, because if any time the phone rings and there's like that delay. That delay at the other end, she instantly hangs up because it's like an Indian call center or something,
Yeah, right.
So does that happen with you?
What, am I? We don't have a landline, so we know that doesn't happen.
Oh, right. You don't actually have one?
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Right.
No, that's... What am I, like a senior citizen or something? I don't know, man.
No, that's very common now. It used to be a real problem, right? Because when you filled out forms and things, people would force you, like, you must have a home phone number. If you do, you can't complete this form. And now it's like, well, people, like the mobile phone's taken over. The whole concept of a home phone is almost redundant to a whole selection of the population.
Yeah. All I do now, I have a Google Voice number now, so that rings all my phones, and that is my home phone number now. So,
right.
Yeah, it's great. Although it does hurt. There is some kind of detection algorithm where they can tell if it's not actually a landline somehow. So,
right. Okay, because I've got to decide to do that for the office, because I've ditched my real phone. Well, I haven't yet. I haven't disconnected my account. I've still got my old analog phone line here. In the lab, but I've got to ditch that. I've got to get VoIP. Well, either VoIP, but then you've got to pay a number to keep the same number you got. And I want to keep the same number. It's a rather nice number, I like it.
Yeah, well,
I don't have to learn a new one, some obscure number. But you've got to pay like a monthly fee forever to keep that number ported into your VoIP account. It's like...
Yeah. Well, maybe not with Google Voice. I don't know, man. Sometimes
I don't know.
You can
I'll check into this Google Voice thing. Is it in Australia?
Yeah.
I got no idea. I'll check into it.
Yeah. So what is new? What's going on in the Aussie land there? I recall you said you had some new deliveries of your microcurrents, and you're kind of getting down to the end of it, or
they just turned up. Yeah, I just got another whole bunch in just before the show here. I had to rudely interrupt you because I heard a brief knock. It's hard to hear the knock at the door with your headphones on. But I did, because I don't have fully enclosed headphones. I've got ones that have, vent holes in the outside, so they do allow at least some sort of,
right.
outside noise to
Which
come
is
in.
what we want anyways. We really don't monitor our own voices, so...
No.
Well, that's good. So when is the next thing coming? I mean, when is the...
Well, it's just a matter of finding time to work on another project, isn't it? I mean, I've got to get these backlog out of the way. So the wife's coming over today to pack and ship more microcurrents, hopefully. And, because I do have a backlog. Like I put, so I filled all the Kickstarter stuff, or almost all of them. There's a couple of stragglers there who didn't put their address in, and a couple of returned items and stuff like that. It always happens. If you're going to run your own hardware business and ship them yourself, as I mentioned on my blog post in the last week. Then, if you haven't read that... then, you've got to allow for the hassle of, one's just like unknown address. It comes back to you and it's like, well, what do? You've taken the person's money and you've got to go contact them and, figure out what happened to their address.
Comes back, right?
And then reship it, and I don't know. And still, some people, I've taken their money and they haven't given me their address. What do I do? Just force their money back via PayPal, or just keep it? I don't know. Boy.
So,
anyway,
let's
I've got
talk
a
about this
backlog.
this blog post. This was a great blog post you posted. So basically,
Thank you.
Dave, if people haven't read it, Dave wrote about basically the realities of starting a small scale electronics company and the prices you should really charge in order to sell and be profitable as a hardware maker.
Yeah, totally. And the number, that magic number we've talked about, you've talked about like times 2.4 of the actual cost.
That's I learned that from Chris Anderson. I think we've said in the meantime three is a much safer, but 2.4 is the one that Chris started.
Yeah, I sort of round that to 2.5. And I actually did a graph sort of, almost proving why that number is a legitimate number. Because if you're going to have distributors who ultimately distribute your product, you need at least it worked out to about 2.5 to 2.6 or something, thereabouts. But that figure we're talking about is multiplied by the actual cost, what it costs for you to produce that product. Everything. It's not just BOM cost; it's everything. Assembly.
It's not just BOM. Okay.
No, it's assembly, testing, the whole works. Shipping, all your parts shipping, all sorts of stuff. Right. And
maybe I had that wrong then. That's interesting. Oh, right. I thought it was BOM cost multiplier. So it's just it's a multiplier on the actual full finished.
Multiplier finished cost. Yeah.
Cost of goods sold, is that COGS or is that something else?
Something like that. I don't know.
That's a pretty businessy term.
It's a businessy term. Yep. Anyway, factor in every possible thing you can think of, even returns and stuff like that, and all sorts of stuff. And multiply it by that 2.5. And if you do that, then if you sell it to a distributor who typically takes around 60% margin on that, and you got to understand what the word margin means and stuff like that. So I've put the formulas in the blog post. I won't go back into it, but if you do that and use the 2.5 multiplier, then you will make the same amount of money per unit as the distributor. Congratulations. Yeah. But if you go below that, the distributor will earn more than you do per product. And that might be okay to you, but for some people that doesn't sit well with them. Look, I've done all the work. This is my product, and somebody's making more per unit. It's the same with a book, right? If you actually write a book, well, you only get like 8 to 10% of the retail price. The bookseller, the bookstore, they're the ones who make 50% on your book, right? If you're lucky, you might get 15% if you're with a really good publisher.
Right.
Of that ultimate retail price. And it's a similar thing in hardware, but not nearly as bad as books, though.
Right, and part of that is the spread, right? So one person making one book sells it to, maybe 1,000, assuming a good distribution deal, you might have 1,000 stores selling your book, but then that store itself might only be selling 5 of your books, right? So they need to get a higher margin to make it worthwhile for them to even put it on the shelf. Shelf space is always expensive and stuff like that.
They've got rent and they've got wages and they've got everything else. Yeah Right. So it's very expensive to run a shop and an actual shop front.
Right. And this, folks, is why Radio Shack is not doing very well.
Right.
Stocking resistors in packs of 5 is not an easy business. I think that Radio Shack guy was actually the CEO was actually at Maker Faire, I think.
Oh, right.
And
okay.
Man, I can't even imagine like that discussion these days being like, well, we make 60% margin on 5 resistors at a time.
Oh, geez, I'd be making more than 60% margin, let me tell you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, $2 for a 5-pack and a blister pack, right? It's
they'd be making.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that's why, right? I mean that's why when our listeners and us go to a local store, that's why you get the gouging. You just have to grin and bear it if you're really that hard up, because planning is what ultimately comes down to.
What we're saying is that there's most money in the retail shop front, although, as we're seeing, once you include all your overheads, it's a mugs game, especially if you're trying to sell a product the same as everyone else sells, It can be a bit of a mugs game. If you're selling Arduinos or Arduino clones, for example, you've set up an online store, then you've got to sell them at a rock bottom price, otherwise you can't compete. Right. I mean, it's just, you can't charge a premium for them.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's way more electronics than it is, or it's way more business than it is electronics. Unfortunately,
totally.
right? You know, like that's the downside of this stuff.
Yeah.
The best business people are going to be the ones who end up surviving.
Yes.
And
exactly.
the electronics nerds end up just being like, all right, well, I guess I'll go tinker some more.
Well, in the blog post, I put because a lot of people ask, why am I not selling through a distributor like I did last time? And the blog post explains that. There's quite a few reasons why. It doesn't mean I won't ever will again, but at the moment, it just doesn't make sense for me to do it. So, yeah. There you go.
Yeah, man. Well, that's I guess that's just the reality of business these days. You gotta try and make some money to survive, and and ultimately what it comes down to, I think, I always feel guilty about this stuff with making money and like charging people money for this kind of stuff.
That's why we'll never be rich, because we're just...
Well, I think even more than just nerds, I think hardware people are cheapskates, right? You're a cheapskate, I'm a cheapskate. Like, this is just a reality of the situation. And so we empathize with our potential customers. We're like, all right, well, I wouldn't pay this much, so why should you, And then it's like, well, then a business person comes along and like, well, we did the calculation and they have to pay this much. So
that's what I did with the microcurrent, right? I get a lot of comments, right? Oh, your microcurrent, why is it so expensive? Look, I've gone through DigiKey and I know the BOM cost. The BOM cost is only $30 or whatever. Why aren't you selling it for $40? And I'm going, dude, well, you go ahead, right? And you see how long you stay in business, all right? You'd be paying yourself, third world country slave wages,
Right.
It's just...
a lot of people did that. There was a lot of analysis about that for Google Glass a while back as well, right? So,
how so?
I will be honest here. I did pay $1,500 for Google Glass, right?
Yeah,
and
but you were an early adopter, in quote marks. You're an early adopter.
Right. Well, yeah, and that's what it comes down to, right? So they calculated the BOM cost to $80 at first, and I think they revised it upwards to like $150, in terms of like the actual cost, because they're getting retail pricing today. That's not necessarily retail pricing when they started, right?
Oh,
That's
totally.
That's the apologist method of like when you're trying to develop a supply chain, you have to actually go through and like, okay, that 640 by 360 or whatever 480 display that that goes into the Prism, they actually helped build up that supply there, right? So they developed the supply that became a vertical market like that. There's a lot of like hidden costs there. Then if you look at it 3 years ago versus if you look at it today, the cost is going to look a lot better today, right? Because there's more available because of the investment in there and everything else.
That's right.
But after all of that stuff, even if it was $300 or $500, right? That's still a ridiculous markup. That's a 300% markup on what should be a consumer item.
Yep.
But that misses the whole point, right? I mean, that really does. I mean, like, I didn't pay because, well, aside for what I should have paid, right? But basically, I didn't do it because
he's
I thought it was a good deal. I know. No.
He probably has to justify it to the wife every day.
Yeah. I'm not listening. Oh, she's not listening. But even like it's not about like I thought it was a good deal, right? It's never about being a good deal for that kind of stuff. It's about being part of something early and then possibly as a market opportunity because, developing hardware for it, thinking like, if it really was the next iPhone, right? You think about how big iPhone ended up getting. I remember saying, $600 for an iPhone. That's ridiculous, right?
Yeah.
And then look at the people that were early adopters of that went on to develop hardware and software for that and ended up making a boatload of money, right? It's an investment at that point.
Yep.
So, that's just it's a calculated risk, I guess. We'll see if that ever pays off.
Well, yeah, I think you did your dough, but you're an early adopter, so woo.
Yeah, and there's risk. I mean, there's always risk to being an early adopter. So.
Yep. Totally.
Speaking of early adopters, I applied for something else today that was a little bit different. I don't know if I'll actually get accepted, but I applied to be a Google Help Out. Have you heard about that?
No, what's a Google Help Out? Sounds like you're doing work for free. That's what it sounds like to me.
Right. Did you know Google Hangouts, like where you can do up to 10 people on a call?
Oh, yes, they released this like a year or more ago or something, and you can charge like $50 to somebody, you can have you can have a Google Hangout with someone and you will help them out with their problem for $50 or some other
So
cost.
basically, I made a video and I applied and I put in my information, my credentials and everything else, and saying,
okay,
well,
so you have to apply. I didn't know that. I thought anyone could just. Here I am.
I got an email actually.
Charge me $50.
I don't know why I got an email. I don't think it was because I'm an expert or anything. I think it was probably just because I use a lot of Google services more than anything else.
Okay, right.
But yeah, so I was like, well, I'm already teaching people online. I might as well offer my services. And then I started thinking about it a little more, and I thought it was interesting. This is kind of an interesting model going forwards of like, I could see this being as like a, not necessarily flexible labor, but that is another possible labor market into the future.
This sort of thing's going to be huge. Yeah.
I actually, I was part of a marketplace kind of like this, so it was called Maven. Did you ever hear of that one?
I heard of it, yeah. I never really looked at it, but...
It was pretty terrible.
Okay, right. Has it failed? Is it still around?
It's still around. I still get emails about it, even though I asked them not to send me them anymore.
Right.
But basically, it was the same kind of thing. It was basically, okay, so you're an expert in a certain area, right? And obviously, working in electronics is very, very niche.
Yep.
And it was like now, so like a marketing manager from like Maxim or TI would go to Maven and be like, I want to interview or survey people for blah, 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 and we're willing to pay up to $30 for a 15-minute survey, that kind of thing.
Right.
And really, I had signed up when it was still supposed to be like an actual consulting gig where it was supposed to be like, TI or Maxim or anyone else wants to actually talk to someone for a couple hours and actually bring them in or, have some video services. They never had that actual capacity. And so it seems like Google Hangouts is kind of an extension of that.
Right.
And it's probably more of a technology thing more than anything else where, Google already has the video conferencing capacity there, whereas Maven did not.
Right.
So... and doing surveys over and over again, it's just like, it was always very, very targeted. It was like, all right, I'm a memory manufacturer, and I want to know about people who are designing in memory at the 1 million pieces or more type of thing. It was like very, very, very narrow. So it was interesting. But I think this is kind of an interesting look at what we'll see in the electronics industry going forward, right? I mean, I've seen other examples of this as well. I don't know if you've seen these as well.
Well, I think there's a couple of sites which do this sort of thing. You can hire out your services on an hourly, basis, and you can do like video conferencing meetups and stuff like that.
Yeah, there was another. I put on a list a while back. It was what was it called? There was one actually called it actually called out people for electronics and had like a fixed rate, which was kind of interesting as well.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, when all this started up like a year and a half, and may have been a couple of years back, I thought about it, should I sort of, start doing this and, charging like $150, $200 an hour or something as a consulting expert or something, because I get quite a lot of email, of, can you help me out? Look, I'll pay you, can you help me out?
Right.
And I'm glad I didn't, actually, because then I would have...
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because I'd be spending... That's not the future I see for myself. This is just a personal thing. It's not that I don't think it's going to work. I think it's going to work for a lot of people. It's going to be huge. But for me, because I'm trying to build something bigger than that, rather than just be an hourly contractor. So that's why I turn down every job opportunity, every consulting opportunity. I have to spend my time and effort building my brand and my blog and everything else that goes along with it. So yeah, even if somebody charged me $500, even if somebody was paying me like $500 an hour, it's just like, yeah, I could, right, and take the money, but ultimately it's not going in the direction, like that's adding no value to building my own. It's getting me money, but that doesn't build my own brand and channel and everything
kind of like
else.
A long-term versus short-term kind of thing, right?
Exactly, yep.
Yeah. So the site I was thinking of is actually protoexchange.com. That's the one I was thinking about. I saw this a while ago. And basically it's the same kind of thing. It's, it's a marketplace. And basically it mirrors like a I want to say Elance or Odesk. I think those are the same thing now. Or there's a couple others out there. Yeah. And it will be interesting to see this over time, though, because what ends up happening with a lot of those sites is usually with marketplaces like that, you start getting a striation of data, right? So you get people that come in and say, "Well, I'll do your work for $60."
Yep.
Total, right? They just want to get the work, and they want to get that kind of stuff. Yeah. This one actually is a little bit different. It actually they have a fixed rate, which is actually I actually messaged them about this as well.
Right.
And I said, well, how does that work geography-wise, right? Because someone working in Sydney or working in New York City or working in San Francisco, right? I think that they would have a harder time with these fixed rates than it would be, someone in I think the Midwest actually would be quite benefited from this kind of thing because you basically start getting these pricing differences, right? The median salary in the middle of the states versus the edges is usually a lot lower. So someone bidding from the middle, right, that has that extra time might be in a better situation than someone living in New York and paying $4,500 a month for an apartment or whatever craziness people are doing these days. So. And
this is interesting because this one targets specific hardware. It's hardware design, and I'm kind of looking at it. It's a bit weird. Like, can anyone join as an expert, or it looks like they have just a select few people? That's what it looks like to me. They've got a select and proven group of.
Well, if you go down the page, they actually show their pricing, which is nice as well, right? That transparency is nice. Yep. So they show flexible pricing, $60 an hour for junior, $99 an hour for professional, $130 an hour for expert, and then you could do a fixed bid pricing as well. And
but if you're an expert, can you come along and just join them instantly, or do they have to vet you?
How do you actually prove yourself, right?
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's always tough in a marketplace like that, right? But, just like the hiring marketplace is tough. I mean, how do you really prove yourself? Even with an interview or anything else. I was listening to Alicia and Chris and Jen on the Embedded podcast. So Making Embedded Systems, our second favorite podcast versus our own. They just changed names over to Embedded. And they were talking about the whole hiring process as well. And, just like how hard it is to just figure that out, right? They were talking about all of the different questions you ask and how do you actually deal with this kind of stuff. And, it's how do you figure this out? How do you figure out if one engineer is going to be a better fit than another engineer?
Yeah. It's impossible. It's it's a gamble.
Right. It totally is. Yeah. So it's interesting from a marketplace standpoint because it's kind of a infinite pool of labor, right? So what it comes down to is how much tie-in do you have, right? Is it like if I'm an expert, do I get to charge $130 an hour and guaranteed 10 hours a week? Probably not, right? It's probably like 1 hour at a time, and if hour 3 is not as good as hour 2, I get fired, right?
Right.
It becomes this fluidity of the workforce. It's kind of an interesting market dynamic.
And then you've got that, you can, based on their experience, they've worked on exactly the same project as you're working on, right? So obviously this person's going to be a fantastic fit. They may not be, right? Because they might not be as efficient as what you're after, right? You may want to pay top dollar for the utmost in efficiency, the person who can get it done tomorrow. And that doesn't necessarily mean, like, that person could be really good. They can have perfect experience in their resume, all their feedback's fantastic, but they're slow. But they could be very thorough and methodical.
Deliberate,
whereas you need somebody who just hacks something together, overnight. That's the kind of person you're looking for, or vice versa. Right, you end up with a hacker, and you wanted somebody who thoroughly who spends a week just documenting shit, and
and you never want to pay for that up front either, right? I mean, that's always
that's right, and then you never want to pay, and then you think it, and that's the problem. Yeah. People hiring hardware people, they don't realize how long hardware takes,
right? My God, yeah,
yeah, it's that's why I just don't want to. Like, I would rather go back and work for the man than work as an hourly contractor again. It's just because the demands are just so high on you to get stuff done and finished. It's like, I don't need that stress. I don't want that stress in my life,
Right.
And some
I was
people
talking to a
like
friend
it,
about
can
this
handle it.
recently, and he said he actually switched over to fixed bids. I was very surprised by that, actually.
Oh, okay, right.
So consulting, if people don't know, consulting engineers often try and do between, hourly rates or fixed bids, right? And usually the hourly rate's always negotiable, right? So if it's like Dave was saying, if you don't necessarily know the subject area, you might bid a lower rate, or you might negotiate a lower rate if you say, kind of going back and forth, how much have you done this kind of thing?
Yep.
And but really, there's still no guarantee. And what he was saying is that there's just a ton of pressure, right? So he was saying that like he was doing layout, and
on an
and
hourly
he felt
basis.
guilty. Well, and he felt guilty like listening to music.
Exactly.
Right? He wasn't like 100% focused, so he started bidding, known jobs to the fixed bid because of that, right?
Yep.
There's risk either way, of course.
Yeah.
But there's it's more kind of on you and your work ethic and kind of the results based.
In my experience, that's how it works. If you're charging an hourly rate, people expect you to be more efficient than if you're charging a job rate. If you're charging for a job, then people are aware, okay, it gets done when it gets done, kind of thing. But when they're charging, when they hire you hourly, the implication that goes along with that is that you're going to do it quick and you're going to be efficient, and I'm going to pay you top dollar per hour, but you bloody well better get it done.
Right.
Tomorrow,
and so
yesterday.
I used to co-work with a bunch of engineers that were doing that. The company I used to work at, we hired a local company that did a lot of that kind of that contract work, but on a larger basis.
Yep.
And oh my God, like comparing the differences in our lifestyles, right? I mean, it was insane to me. It was like, oh well, hey man, how's your work going? I'm like, oh well, I heard about these new parts for, I had these 3 different FAEs come in, and they told me about these parts, and it was great to hear about this kind of stuff. And they're like, no. I can't talk to FAEs. It's just like I can't write that on a timesheet. And I'm like,
exactly. Heck, I can't even talk to you. I don't have the time. Go away. Right?
It was so insane. And I didn't realize that's how it was either.
Yeah.
And so the first time that happened, I was so shocked and appalled. And I'm like, well, okay, yeah. So you don't get to talk to FAEs, but you're taking like, you're probably. Oh, between like Christmas and New Year's, it's probably really dead at your office, right?
Right.
No. If we don't come in, I'll get fired or something. I'm just like, dude.
Oh yeah.
It was just like, and it's not even like it was like this. It wasn't like me talking to a buddy who worked at a totally different company. It was like people that were doing almost effectively the same work that I was, that had a completely different experience. And it was just like, holy crap, that is not... I mean, and that's what it comes down to, is like, it becomes a grindhouse for those folks. I mean, like, the corporate jobs might be not paid as well, but the lifestyle is way different, right? I mean, in a better way, I think, personally. I don't think I'd survive that way.
No. Yeah, exactly. As I said, I wouldn't... I've worked for myself, and I've done contract consulting work before, and I would not go back to it. It's just... Yeah, there are advantages. That's why I worked so many decades, in the end, working for a big company, because it was a lifestyle thing. It was low stress, 0 stress almost.
Right. Go home at the end of the day kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Don't care.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Whew, man, that's intense.
It's intense just talking about it.
It is. I feel my adrenaline pumping right now, like thinking about that. And I feel bad, like... And I think it's a personality type too, right? And like it ends up,
it
ends up affecting design decisions too. That's the other thing that was interesting too. Like a lot of times, I'd be working with my corporate coworkers, right? And it'd be like, okay, well, let's take this and analyze it, and if it slips a little bit, that's okay. And then on the other side, it was just like, talking to the contracting folks, and like.
Yep.
Like, I totally understand where they're coming from, right? And I respect the shit out of them for doing this really, really fast-paced work, right, that they have to bill for. But, it was always just like, go, right? And we'd be like, well, let's take a second to look at, go,
Holy
holy moly. And it's like, what ends up happening is they become very efficient, but becomes very snap judgment, right? So it was like, oh well, let's look, like a lot of system design stuff, right? You and I are both system designers. We look at higher level stuff. When you start to do that kind of thing, you really have to take a step back. You have to plan interfaces. You have to plan architecture type stuff.
You got to have backup plans upon backup plans and look at
exactly right. And when when you have these like reactive decisions like that, it just like starts to build up. And man, I really feel stressed thinking about it right now. Like I really, really do. And I haven't talked about my most previous job yet, but I will once the product I worked on comes out. I will talk about it. But it's been thinking, and like I said, I respect the crap out of those guys. They really do work hard.
For people, there's some people who thrive on that, and they love it because then it becomes their life, and they're usually, they're
workaholics.
I hate to say it, but they're usually single workaholics. They live and work in their lab, their lab is at home, and they live and work there, and they have, little else outside of that, and I don't know. There's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want to do, fine. Hey, awesome. Go for it.
I feel guilty sometimes too because I think about so I talk to friends who are out in the Bay. Obviously the Midwest is a lot different than the Bay Area, different than Sydney, different than everywhere else. Obviously everywhere is different, but I can't imagine some of these, even or the people that live in China, as well, and just these different lifestyles like that. I honestly, I just, until you're in it, I can't imagine. I obviously I used to work, 70-hour weeks when I was at Samsung, right? But it's just these weird lifestyle changes that you can't really experience until you're in them, and I guess the thing is, I don't want to experience them
anymore.
So I will not be signing up for Proto Exchange, and I also will not be signing up for actually Circuit Hub. So Circuit Hub's another one doing it.
Yep, that's right.
Andy, we've had on the show before. We'll have to have Andy back, I think, and we'll have to have Andy back. They've started moving into some interesting stuff as well.
Okay.
But they're doing the same kind of thing, looking for consulting engineers, and as the hardware revolution, quote unquote, continues, right? We keep moving deeper into that. People are going to be looking for more and more labor, and what's going to happen is people in the Midwest are going to get thrust into this Bay Area culture or the China culture, and kind of vice versa, and it's just going to be this weird mishmash of cultures and expectations, and we'll see what happens.
At some level, I am jealous of people who can do this. I'm jealous of people who can just work so efficiently and so hard and so focused. I just can't do that. I can't do that.
Well, you have your forum, so.
Right. Boy.
I've been experiencing this lately. So for my course, so we're in the 6th week out of 8. We just finished. We're in the 7th week out of 8, right? So in the build course, and a lot of the members have been lapping me. So I've been making videos, obviously, and a lot of them are like, "Oh yeah, I wrote this code, and this part works, and that part works, and I got this interactive." And Chris isn't there yet, and I'm like, "Oh
Chris
crap!"
Isn't there yet. But that's it.
It's. I think it's two things. Is one is my trip killed me, right? So that's definitely one thing, and the other is that going into, and obviously they're awesome people, right? That's the unsaid thing, but a lot of them, as we get into coding stuff, now I'm slower and they're a lot faster.
Yeah.
And
but see, the thing is, you're not devoting 100% of your time to it, whereas they might be. Right.
I think that that is true. That always does make a difference.
That makes a huge difference. If you're trying to, work a 9-to-5 job, do a blog, and do some contracting on the side, and do something else, and have a life, and you're trying to do all this, it's like, no, your productivity drops to, takes
right. The context
toll.
switching is very, very tough, right? I mean, No, and I don't want to sound like I'm making an excuse for myself because I really don't have one.
No,
some of them are just better at it than I am,
that
to be
is
honest.
a legit. Well, yeah, they are, but you're no slouch, right? But it's just that,
right.
it's just the factor that you have other things. You know,
Yeah,
you have other things on your plate too, and it takes time to get back up to speed on something.
Yeah,
that's why I never get my projects finished, right? Because I can't just do an hour here, an hour there. It doesn't work. I've got to go, right, I'm going to spend the next 3 days solid on this, you know, and then I might get something done. Yep. Deep dive, yes.
You know, I've thought about this, though, and it's kind of an interesting idea of, like, not playing the fool, but, like, playing the... someone to kind of like a benchmark to race against. Like some people really thrive on that too. So I think I'm moving at an average pace on this build, right? So we're building the bench buddy, and there's been a lot of snafus to say the least. And we can talk about that. Yeah. But actually, it's interesting. You know, kind of going forwards, it's kind of an interesting. I don't know if it's a business model or anything else, but just like, you know, like people want to compare themselves and have like something to work towards, right? I mean, that's another thing, right? It's just working in a group, right? People thrive on that competition and everything else. And and I feel like that's almost like a service these days, you know, like having a group that has a similar focus and then working towards a goal. Some people are very, very motivated just by working towards a common goal. And I think that's awesome.
Or showing off. This goes right back to the, the Steve Woz, what was the mental block? I can't believe it. The
computer club?
The hardware computer club thing. What is it?
The homebrew.
The homebrew computer club, right? It was, you would work, ridiculous.
48 hours stint, right? You'd be on a bender for 48 hours.
Exactly, just to have something to show off at next week's meeting.
Right.
I
mean, it's the same thing that happens in Maker Faire and everywhere else, right? It's
totally.
Like you need some kind of final goal to work towards, and once you do, some people just deliver. You know, their adrenaline kicks in, and
We've talked about this before. Engineers have the knack, pun intended.
The knack.
We're sorry, ma'am. He
has the knack.
You have the knack of if you have a really hard deadline, you always make it somehow.
Yep.
You know, it just happens. Engineer, anyone who calls himself an engineer will make that deadline.
That's right.
It just
and it's tough when you manufacture for yourself too, right? I mean, obviously you know this with a Kickstarter. Obviously you did well actually with it, but you know, I think about like my personal fitness type of goals and stuff like that. Oh well, I need to be this, have this kind of goal by the end of the month and that kind of thing. Like it's tough when you're setting it yourself, like intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation.
Yep.
Intrinsic's always tougher. I mean, the people that have intrinsic are always end up doing better. But when there's always an extrinsic goal, it does help. I think that's just a human.
Totally. Yeah. Trait. Yep.
Right. Well, that's why I think you and I talked about that with like having managers. Having a manager kind of pushing that kind of thing.
That's it. That's it. Right.
It's not something that we like want necessarily, but it is.
People ask why.
It does help.
Why don't I finish the micro supply project? Why have I spent years dicking around with it? Well, if this was a task at my job, I'd have it done in a month, right? From go to woe. Right. It's just because it's a deadline. You're expected to do it, and somebody's going to kick your ass if you don't. And then, there's weekly meetings. You've got to show your progress, and you've got to do this and that, and and you have to meet goals. And I need this board laid out by here, otherwise I know it's, 5 days to get it manufactured and assembled, and I've got to test it here, I've got to show it off, I've got a meeting scheduled where I've got to demo it, and I've got to, it's just a totally different ballgame.
It's an engineering ego, right? It's a there's a lot of human factors in there that also seem to mesh with our need to build stuff, right?
Yeah. Whereas if it's your own project, it's like, who cares? If I don't do anything this week, who cares, right? It's my project. Everyone else can piss off, right?
Right. Yeah, for better or worse, right? It's like some people want that so they can have that flexibility, but then you don't necessarily get the benefits on the backside either.
No, that's right. Yep.
Yeah. I tell you, I always said I was never a better guitar player than when I was in college, when I had exams.
Right.
When I was motivated to do anything other than study. That was my extrinsic motivation, was study, play guitar instead of studying.
Right.
It's just like, it's just about what you focus on, or what you what your brain wants you to focus on. I mostly that's me being a procrastinator, of course, but
right.
Yeah.
So tell us about the screw up.
Oh yeah, so so the bench buddy, I'm holding a bench buddy in my hand right now, actually.
A non-functional bench buddy.
Non-functional. Yeah, so there were some pretty big ones. I mean, some of them, so you had said, I had a conversation with some of the members talking about this as well, and like how you had wished us the worst, right? You had wished us that we did not
I
have a
hope
perfectly
your project
working.
doesn't work. Yeah.
Right, exactly. And obviously I wish it would have gone better, but it does not work. So thank you, David.
No worries. You're welcome.
Yeah, but it's basically a lot of the common stupid mistakes, right?
Yeah, they happen time and time again. Regardless of how experienced you are, regardless.
Exactly, right. Yeah, 20 years of experience, you can still do. So like one was like the Spy, the Mosi and Miso, those
you got them back to front.
Master in, Slave out, Master out, Slave in. Got those backwards.
Yep, of course. Yep.
But the thing that was beneficial is that I had all of my digital connections. This is all Arduino based, so all my digital connections, I had jumpers to each pin, so I was able to easily wire that across. Right,
yep,
so that jumper pin, that was actually not bad. Right, I didn't have to cut any traces; they were already pre-cut, and that was all like solder bridged jumpers in there, kind of thing.
Yep.
But the big one was the I don't know if I should spoil this for everyone, but the if anyone's thinking about taking the course in the future, the hardest footprint on the board, this A to D that I have is actually an analog front end. It says the wrong footprint. Wrong footprint.
How wrong is it? What, did you get the wrong pitch? Did you get the wrong width? What?
The wrong width. So
that's common.
Stupidly had assumed that TSSOP and SSOP were the same, and they are definitely not.
Wah, 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 wah.
Wah, wah. Yep, sad trombone. But what's been interesting about this is that they're pretty close. This has actually been the most interesting thing.
Yep.
And so what we've had is interesting conversations about how to modify the footprint. And actually taking an SSOP and then folding the pins under like an LPCC has been one method of doing that kind of thing.
Been there, done that.
And then another one is trimming the leads. Another was like kind of doing like a what we call tiptoe method.
Yep.
And so what this means is that like we need even more flux than we would in the first place, and better drag soldering and better like hot air and everything else.
Absolutely.
And so it has been a learning experience.
So much so that you should have deliberately designed that in to begin with. And let the people
who says
discover
I haven't,
it.
Dave?
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to claim this in the future.
I told you, this is where learning happens, right?
It does, right, exactly. And I don't know how to balance the two, right? I don't know how to...
Right, yeah,
how do
you can't go
deliberately
overboard.
have that, right?
Yeah, I know. It's better when they organically happen, to use a wank word, Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, and there's a lot of other small stuff on here. And really it's just life, This is just and that's what I said. It's like this is a prototype. This is a realistic look at what you're going to do in your own designs, right? And
so did you give this board out to people before you got it fabbed and asked them to check it? Or did you just trust yourself?
Yeah, but that's like given, that's like people that aren't necessarily experienced with it,
right,
you know what I mean? Like
right. Yeah.
So I was thinking that at first too. That's not quite fair.
But I would have thought they're the ones who might go through and methodically test every component, check every component. Just because they're enthusiastic and I'm going to find something on here,
Well, the pinout's not wrong. That's the problem, right? That's the problem. Anytime you have a footprint issue, is that if it's a big difference if pins 1 and 20 are swapped, it's a lot different than if your pitch is slightly different or your width is slightly different, right? I mean, like, all of them can have a detrimental effect, but I think the really obvious ones are the ones where it's, is pin 1 actually MOSI, right?
Yes,
is pin 2 actually VDD? Those are the tough things. Those are the things that are easy to check, but not necessarily, it's all about where your assumptions are and where you
Well, a good thorough check, you assume nothing. You check each individual, cross-reference each individual pin on the schematic against the data sheet. You cross-reference the footprint, the pitch, the sizes, the mapping of the schematic to the footprint. You know?
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, and it's... I've been meaning to make like a checklist for that kind of thing. It's like a promotional thing for contextual electronics. Like that's...
Yep. That's the holy grail of
course, right? Yeah,
I've got a list of that somewhere. Things you should
I think
check
I asked you about that at one point on the show, like things you should check.
Yep.
But even still, like what it comes down to, so this has been another discussion that's come up with us as well, is that no matter what, like even if someone held a gun to your head and said,
exactly,
check that data sheet 3 more times, right?
You're gonna miss it.
You're still going to miss something until you get into it, right? So, and this happens every time there's a spy part for me. It's always like, oh, crap, that's what that pin does? You know what I mean? Like, you just make these mental assumptions and these leaps, and it's just like, until you're in it and you see that behavior that you didn't think was supposed to happen, that's the only time that learning really happens.
Mm-hmm.
And, all of this experience and, going forwards into this... all the people the tools that people develop and everything like that, like I don't think there's any replacement, honestly. I feel like it's like, the only thing that's going to benefit us is Osh Park offering low-cost boards or other low-cost...
Right, and respin it.
Yeah, exactly. Lowering the cost of failure is like the only thing that ultimately benefits us.
There's 2 things you need. The holy grail of electronics design is cheap respins and a time machine. Right, they're the 2 things that's all you need. You don't need talent; you just need those things. Oh boy! And the thing is, you're often not aware that you're doing this. It is a subconscious thing. Your mind, you think that you've checked that, but your mind. Like in your mind, you go, oh, yeah, I thoroughly checked that, but you didn't. Your mind told you that you thoroughly checked it, but you didn't. You mentally skipped over it because your mind made an assumption that it was okay, and you're not aware of that. It's psychology stuff. You can get right into a PhD thesis on that.
Oh, yeah. The other problem with that is that, so even when you had, so say I was doing a board and I had looked at this schematic and layout for 20 hours cumulative, and I was ready to send it out, and I'm like, Dave, can you take a look at this? I've looked at this over and over and over again, and I can't look at it anymore without, I can't find anything now. The other problem there is that there's still a threshold, right? Until you've looked at it for 5 hours, you know what I mean? Like, until you dig in, that cursory look is not enough either, right? There's like this sweet spot between looking at it enough and looking at it too much. It's just like, and this is why respins happen.
Because ultimately, like, the checklist you were talking about, all right, the checklist is simple. It's one line. It's check everything. And then assume nothing in brackets, right? But to do that on any mildly complex design would take you weeks and weeks. It'd be so mentally taxing that at some point you're going to cheat, right? And you're going to make those mental assumptions. That's why it never happens. That's why the ultimate test is always in the pudding. When you actually assemble the thing and test it, did it work?
Yeah, and I had a great manager too, where I was stressing over a lot of this stuff too. Where I would just stress and stress and stress. He's like, man, he turned to me, he's like, Chris, sometimes you just gotta pull the trigger. Because you're gonna find stuff so much faster when you do turn the board, and because the cost isn't as much as it used to be, and because of yada 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 yada, right? It actually does make sense to just fail. That is ultimately what it comes down to.
From both a time and a cost point of view. Because time is money, right? And if you spend a week thoroughly checking it, well, were you better off just sending the thing out a week ago and build it up and see what problems there were, right?
Exactly. Because, you'll get that checklist of things you should have done better from the beginning.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, totally. Spin it. Just spin it.
And go.
There's a T-shirt.
Just spin it.
T-shirt.
I was thinking the same thing.
Yep. I said it first. It's mine.
Okay, you get quality for you get the checkpoint for this one. Yep. Just spin it. Spin it and go, man.
Just spin it with the PCB. Yep.
And don't forget, folks, the Auto Router T-shirt is still available.
Right. Yeah. Oh, goodness.
It's interesting. So, go ahead.
No. It's all right.
We so we talked about the cost, bringing down the cost of the PCBs and everything, how much that is. There's actually a service I heard about last week as well, kind of trying to do the same thing for chip design, right? So we've talked about MOSIS in the past, MOSIS, right? That's a wafer sharing service where you have multiple wafers and everything going through. Yep. This is now a service that's supposed to do multiple chips per wafer, and the number I had heard was as low as $500 per chip.
Whoa,
right?
Dude, that's hobbyist affordable.
I know, and that's kind of crazy. And so, interestingly, there was actually someone on the subreddit as well talking about this, because the other interesting thing with this is not necessarily that it's not necessarily that you have to have, a full license of Mentor now,
right?
There's actually a tool that's actually included on the website that actually does.
That was going to be my question. It all comes down to the tools now, right? The cost of getting the chip manufactured is nothing now.
Right, exactly. So Clifford Vienna had written this on Reddit, and so he had written Yosis. I'm not sure what Yosis is. That's the synthesis backend. So we'll link that in as well. But basically, it's web-based now as well, right? Which is another big deal, right? I mean, you and I are not necessarily fans of web-based IDEs or anything that's, meant to be quick turn type of thing. But I don't think chip fabbing is quick turn.
No, it's not. I wouldn't mind probably using a web tool, especially if it's the only option, right?
Right.
I mean, fine, okay.
Right.
Let's go for it.
Right. So basically, Clifford is the author, and he'd written on our subreddit as well, which was actually, I don't know how the hell he found us, but
right.
But basically, so it's Verilog based, and it's a push button flow. So I think what it is basically it's if you have a digital design. So I think it's someone like Jerry, right? So obviously Jerry's experienced in chip design. She's been pushing through this chip. She's custom designing, but thinking about like if you have an FPGA design written in Verilog, right, and it's timing wise, you look up the timing characteristics of the silicon. I think they said it was 180 nanometers, something like that.
Right.
So not like super huge, but not not like what are they at 28 nanometers these days?
They go from 600 down to 130.
No. I mean like the leading edge technology, like TSMC these days. I think they're.
Right.
They're 28 or 20 nanometers.
or something, aren't they? Stupid. Yeah. Something stupid like that.
Yes. Yeah, something stupid small. But basically, so it's still big, but I mean, this is like the stuff, this is like the commoditized stuff that like a lot of the analog folks are doing now too, right? Analog's still up at 180, I think 90 is the smallest that analog goes these days for some of the mixed stuff. So, I mean, but still, like, in terms of like stuff that you or I could do, it's kind of crazy.
No, I'm thinking like it looks like they're just like you have to sign up for a pilot program or something. There's not much information on here.
Right.
So you've got to look. They're so new that they're. Where did you get all these prices and stuff from?
From a friend.
Right. Okay. Right.
Yeah. Hopefully, I was supposed to say this. Man, I could be wrong too. Like honestly, I could be wrong.
Right,
but I mean, like this is kind of an opening up of capacity, right? I mean, this is ultimately what it comes down to, right? We talked to, crap, I'm gonna forget. They were a former sponsor of ours. A little help, Dave.
Yeah, I know. Come on, I've got the worst memory
Lucas
in history.
And
you're a genius compared to me when it comes to memory. You're such a people person.
Triad
semiconductor. That's right.
Yes, that's it. Yes. I met all of them too. So I met Reed and Luke out at EE Live as well. So they were all out there. But and that's another thing where it's like it's a commoditized process, and then they basically do the metallized layer over top of a fixed set of semiconductors. In this case, this is actually custom semiconductors now, kind of like Moses did, right? So Moses was another one that a lot of people did. You hear people doing for grad projects and stuff like that. Yeah, right. But I don't know, man. This is like $500. Like that's definitely like that could open up some startups. It's pretty crazy, right?
If that's actually the price, I will do that on the blog. I'll like design something and get it fabbed.
Nice.
Yeah, like that. Like, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
I hope I'm not lying now.
See, I can't. I can't believe they can do that price, right? Because they've got to package that chip as well, right? I don't think they give you a bare die, right?
Oh, they might.
Well, they might. Okay, so you got to bloody wire bond the thing over yourself. Okay, well that could be...
you could do probing and stuff like that. You could have test vectors.
Great.
You could send them test vectors, that kind of thing. We know people. So Tony, who's been on the show, he's done wire bonding. We could find you a wire bonder, Dave.
Right.
This is totally doable.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I don't. Well, if your die was big enough, you could do it under. If your pads were big enough, you could do it under a regular microscope, probably.
Yeah. Exactly. Right. Yeah.
I don't know. And they what's this they're doing? They can do mixed signal as well.
I haven't read that far into it.
See, because of that. So. Well, they're talking about mixed signal on here, and see, that's a different ballgame. When you start talking analog stuff, you know, digital stuff's easy, right? Digital,
right, that's a translation of Verilog, right?
You just send them your Verilog code, and it's all practically guaranteed to work, right, out of the bat.
Yeah.
Right, as long as you've tested, you've tested your Verilog code.
You're not pushing the limits of the clock or anything weird.
No, it's exactly. You're not trying to eke every last cycle out of the thing or something, right? Then it's probably going to work if you've done all your test benches properly on your Verilog. Why wouldn't it work? But something like analog, well, I mean, hey, yeah. Is the gain of that transistor good enough at that frequency? Well, I don't know.
Right, exactly.
It's all to do with the doping and everything else, right?
Right, exactly. And that's where a lot of I think the fancy pants, the packages from the Mentor and the Cadence, everything else like that.
That's why
that's where they come in because they're super characterized and they have built-in synthesis and simulation and everything else, and it's
for your particular fab and your particular technology.
Right.
Yeah. Yep. So, yep. But that's something to keep an eye on, that's for sure. Join our pilot program. Here we go. I'm going to click. Oh, put in your name and address. Your contact number. All right. Wonder if they'll recognise me. Dave at Eve.
Yeah, probably not.
No.
I mean, it's a different domain, right? I mean, it's just like... So it's so interesting seeing like the I mean, this is ultimately a capacity thing, right? I mean, like if you have enough capacity out there, eventually you're going to start the same thing. Like honestly, the same thing that Lane was doing with Osh Park. Right. The reason we can get $5 per square inch is because there's enough fabs out there and there's enough capacity that you can get good pricing, right? And another measure of capacity overages. Did you see the article where Japan is growing lettuce in old chip fabs? Did you see that one?
Oh, really? No. Have they got photos?
Yeah.
Is there photos?
I don't think they're doing. No, I don't think they're done with it yet. But basically, it's a clean room environment. This is an EE Times article, and it's like you can start having controlled...
I can see that they're in the bunny suits with the.
Yeah. Right.
Why are they in the bunny suits? Why are they?
Probably for the picture, to be honest. But I mean, you start to get rid of all the reasons you would need
the lettuce stays fresher. Then no pesticides. The lettuce stays fresher for longer, and there's these guys in the bunny suits inspecting these lettuces.
Yeah.
This is one step above organic. This is like
right. I'm sure if you had extra phosphorus canisters, from your implantation, implanter thing, you could probably use that as well, right?
Oh, and they've got a wanky artist impression of the Toshiba clean room vegetable facility. Come on, this has to be an April Fool's joke.
I know it feels like it for sure because it's like. You got to think of the operating cost, right? Just for like the air filters they use in those places is super expensive. But what it ultimately comes down to for me is like the capacity measure, right? It's just huge overcapacity at this point, especially in older technology areas. You know, like when the big chip companies only demand 40 nanometers and below, well, if some place is outfitted for 180 nanometers, the cost between upgrading and the cost between growing lettuce is like... So what's a salad?
Come on. This has got to be bullshit. I mean, come on. There's no way this is economically practical.
It feels like it, but I don't know. Like, you think about the density of the place, you know, like, lettuce isn't cheap, right? I mean, like, I don't know, man. It's they quote. I think there was a comment in there too, you know, talking about the cost, right? If you think about the overall operational cost of running a chip fab,
somebody said they should be making potato chips.
Right, but I mean, like, when you think about the operational cost of all the raw inputs, right? Thinking about, you know, silicon and all the energy inputs like that, when it's just lights and it's just a filtration system and, you know, deionized water, whatever they're using to actually water the plants, it's like, well, crap. Maybe it actually could be economical, you know? It's like, it really, you know, aside from the overcapacity thing, it also shows me it's like, you know, chip making is expensive. You know? Like, I know that's not a revelation in any, you know, way, shape, or form.
It is actually the most expensive process on the planet. To manufacture what we take for granted, that processor in those electronics in your phone, it is the most expensive thing on the planet to manufacture, most expensive and complex thing. Yeah. You know, it's just It's just because they put so much into it on such a large scale that you take it for granted that you can buy your 200,000 parts for $1 each on DigiKey. You know, I mean,
right, exactly.
It's just volume.
When you think about all the different, that would be interesting to see, like a pie chart of all the input costs and all the costs. Like, you know, you think, okay, well, yeah, silicon, they get the cost down for that, like, to maybe, I don't know, like a couple $100 a wafer or something like that. But even at a couple $100 a wafer, how many total wafers need to be made before, you know, the smelting plant and all the purification stuff that goes into making the ingot gets paid off? And, you know, like, how much of that wafer cost is like a new diamond tip blade to actually slice up that wafer? You know, like all of the crazy stuff that just goes into it. It's just like, geez.
Yep.
I need to work harder. I feel guilty sometimes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I feel guilty. This new space thing. The
new SpaceX. I knew you'd bring that up.
Elon Musk, man. This friggin' guy.
Well, look, every time somebody tweeted this. I can't remember who it was. It's somebody I follow on Twitter. They're not in engineering, but so it might have been Sam Harris or somebody like that. Anyway, somebody said that Elon Musk is surely the greatest engineer who's ever lived, and I go, I don't think so.
It's a tough call.
He's a vision. He's not an engineer. He's a very smart guy. I'm sure he gets into the technical details of all this stuff, but as you know, I wouldn't go as far to say that. You know, that's a bit.
Yeah. How do you judge that, right?
Yeah, how do you judge that? I mean, it's, you know, it's not like he's done any of the engineering himself, you know.
No, I think he does some stuff. I think he's definitely in on a lot of the decisions.
I'm saying, he's very clearly, he does some, you know, I'm sure he sits in the technical meetings and says, no, this is the best way to do it, you know.
Yeah.
And, but.
Yeah, I hear it's kind of cultish over there as well. Like, I was reading stuff about the.
Totally. I can imagine that.
How the salaries are lower there. I think there was a Quora post about that. Why are the salaries lower at SpaceX? And basically it was like, you know, it's kind of cultish, and it's like, oh, well, it's basically not cultish, but like cultish in the way that like people believe in it. You know, like, okay, we're going to send people to friggin' space.
That's right. So I'm going to work for peanuts. Yeah, exactly, to make it happen. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. And I have nothing but respect for that, you know? Like,
I know.
It's like, I would too, you know? It's like freaking space, right? Like, it's space, man. Like, that's crazy. So, yeah.
Well, we went there, you know. We went there in the 60s, so it's okay.
Right.
It's just
but we haven't been back much.
Too lazy to go back, Yeah,
right. Money and political will. Well, we should say that the NASA, I don't know if you saw that, NASA is planning to...
No, I haven't seen. I'm going to have to read it again. What the?
Yeah.
Come on. What the? NASA's always done it wrong. They've always, you know, they haven't done it right since Apollo. Let's put it that way. Right? No, seriously. They have not done it right since Apollo. Yeah. Like the space shuttle was an expensive farce. right?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, it got okay, it was cool, right? It was a reusable shuttle, kind of. The boosters were one-off, right? And, massive cost. But the cost of sending these things up was ridiculous. And you're sending up humans to do what robots can do. It was ridiculous. They lost their way, right? They lost their way because they didn't have any vision. They didn't have any Kennedy-esque vision.
What was it, like $600 million a launch or something like that for a shuttle launch?
It's just ridiculous. And you didn't even need to send humans to do most of the stuff they did. It was just, no, it's been a farce, always has been, and they'll just screw it up again. And that's why they've got
no... we can be optimistic, I think, right?
Well,
I think
we can, but no, until like the president sets a goal, right? It's just not going to happen. If you just leave it up to NASA, their own internal... trying to please everyone, right? Everyone's got their own pet project. That's why this the Mars thing, right? George W. Bush, right? W came out and we're going to Mars, in his Texas accent or whatever it is, and everyone went yay, rah rah rah. They trotted out bloody, Buzz and everyone at the time, and Cernan and all the, all of the, exactly. They dragged them all out. And they did the big press ones. We're going to Mars. All right, let's do it. And then, it was the 40-day report. It was called, I think. And I'm getting an inkling. We've mentioned this before, and I've had a rant before, but I'll rant again. It was like the NASA 40-day report, based on how long it took to, Bush said, I want a report in 40 days of how to get to Mars and how much it's going to cost, and I'll put it to Congress, and Congress will approve it. And they came back, NASA did their thing, they got it done in their 40 days or whatever, and the report came back, and no, it'll cost, 800 trillion million bazillion dollars, because everyone in NASA rubbed their hands together and went, well, you have to include my idea, and my idea is these huge big starships that we have to build to go, and it was like, so everyone got their pet idea into the report, and that's how much it cost, and it just was not practical. And the same thing
there wasn't
will
any
happen
focus
with this.
there, right?
No, there was no focus. There was no one driving it, said, we need to do it by the end of the freaking decade, and we're just going to do it. And no vested interest bullshit, just, Yeah,
it's interesting. I mean, ultimately, it comes down to like the same kind of like human interaction type stuff, right?
Yep.
So like thinking about my least favorite example ever, but thinking about the whole Apple thing, people going behind jobs and like basically having a centralized figure, right? I mean, you can go back to Caesar if you wanted to as well, but it's the same kind of thing with Musk, right? I mean, like the same kind of thing of having a strong figurehead and people kind of gathering around that. And I guess you can go back to Apollo and saying that's Kennedy, or saying that's whoever's leading NASA then, or just saying that fighting the Ruskies is another thing. I don't know how people said it back then, but basically, like having some kind of common purpose at that point. And you're right, when there's not that, it devolves in kind of a political thing. So
no, you've got to have one person calling the shots, but it doesn't always work. I mean, hey, look at Altium. Right?
Hey,
there was one person there who called the shots, and they almost ruined the company, and went nowhere for 10 years, right? And because they weren't practical. Okay, so you've got to, it's not just a matter of having one person in charge, right? If Musk wasn't any good, right, then they would have gone down the toilet. Right, but he just so happens to be really freaking good, right? He's got really freaking visions. Right. He understands the goals. He understands what things are practical and what aren't, and speaking of which, doesn't the new Dragon module kick ass?
Yeah, the V2. So that is what we didn't actually say that, but that is what got announced this week. Was
the new Dragon module.
Is it 9 person and 2 crew? Is
9 person or something? And no, it's 9 people total, I think.
9 people total.
And it comes down like it doesn't just fly through the atmosphere and deploy parachutes. It's got controlled jets. Well, it does have parachutes as a backup, but it's designed to land, you refuel it, and you go back up. And you stick it on the top of a rocket again, and you go, well, I think you probably have to replace the heat shield, but hey, that's just me.
Who cares?
Right? I know,
so cool
it's freaking awesome. And did you see inside it? It's just got these chairs. It's like freaking, Carl Sagan's Cosmos. Not Cosmos. God, help me out here. Mental block in my rage. Contact. Contact, the movie in the book. You know, and
right.
you haven't. No, you're not into that. Anyway, right? You know,
I've watched the movie, but it's been a while. So,
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Inside is so cool.
Static.
It's like that. You know, it's just got chairs inside and this big flip down console, this big touch screen flip down console. Oh, it's sex on a stick. It really is. Oh man, it's just And I'm sure it works. I'm sure it's practical.
Yeah, we want knobs as long as it's an oscilloscope. But if it's a spaceship, if there's rockets behind us, we want touchscreens, folks.
They had backup knobs and buttons in that. Like everything else was touchscreen, but in the middle they had, in an emergency, here they are, the buttons.
Here's the knobs.
Right,
Here's
here
the
are
buttons,
the knobs
right.
and the buttons that bypass
big red
everything
button.
else. Exactly.
Yeah.
So when shit hits the fan, the pilot can just grab that stick and boom, boom, boom. Right.
Yep.
And speaking of Mars, the interesting thing about Mars in the books I've been reading recently is, you would never send pilots again, right? Pilots would never go. Because if you think about it, right, a trip to Mars, right? What percentage of the entire trip time would need piloting skills? Like it's 0.001%. Or something that would actually need piloting skills, right? So, and most of the time, it's computers and everything has to automatically handle it, right?
Right.
And,
not to mention we've already landed something on Mars without any human intervention. So
exactly,
probably
multiple
could replicate
times.
that, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So what you send is they the complement of crew, which would go. They reckon you can send 4 people comfortably to Mars, and that's the best number. You would send 2 engineers and 2 scientists. The 2 scientists, because you've got to send scientists, right? What's the point of going if you don't send scientists?
I would send 4 badasses. I don't care what they are.
No.
I mean, honestly, at this point, honestly, resourceful badasses that have a lot of self-control.
Right? That's what the engineers are there, right? They're the fix-its. And, of course, you don't send a doctor, right? Because, hey, you can send a thing up on a CD that tells them, right, and medicine. Anyone can become a doctor if you train them for a couple of months and they've got all the info there, right?
That's some strong words there, buddy, but we'll say that the knowledge...
they can take care of
80% of the cases, at least.
Right, exactly, right? They can take care of... it'd be a waste of resources to send a doctor. Just like it'd be a waste of resources to send a pilot. Only a doctor would be a waste. Right? Yeah. Totally. But
I think whoever goes has to be in every person.
Oh, yeah, you've got several years to train them, right? So everyone would be trained up, at least 2 people in the crew, they'd be trained up on medicine, right? So they'd spend, and they'd have all the resources, plus they'd have contact with mostly, right? So it's only if shit hit the fan that, and everything can be done by procedure. Okay, you look up the, Have you ever been to a doctor recently? Right, you go in there and they put your symptoms into a computer, and that pops out the that pops out the known issues that they.
Yeah, Watson's starting to do diagnosis as well. The IBM computer that was on Jeopardy as well.
Right, okay, see, interesting.
That's his new task is diagnosis.
Yeah, you don't need to send these people. So yay, engineers will go to Mars.
Yeah, like I said, all I want to send is the only people I want to send is badass, resourceful people. Like honestly, that's ultimately all you need. Resourceful people with a lot of access to internet.
You need 4 MacGyvers, right?
4 makers, four hacker maker types.
MacGyvers.
Yeah, dude. Well,
MacGyvers.
Yeah, I guess MacGyvers. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's the type that fixes the air filter in the Apollo 13 module, right?
Exactly. That's right.
Yeah.
Oh,
the
goodness.
Nerves of steel. I don't. Yeah.
With 10 seconds left on the countdown timer,
Yeah, right. Does that mean if they're MacGyvers, they need mullets too?
Yeah, got to have mullets. Yeah, got to have 80s
that
mullets.
That guy had a fabulous mullet.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Have you seen him now? Oh, God, it's embarrassing, dude.
No.
Man, yeah.
We should mention as well, so the one we mentioned last week, I think we mentioned the reboot of the ISEE-3 satellite. Did you see that they did reclaim it?
Oh, did they? No, I didn't. Didn't catch the latest news.
They
did reclaim it.
Yeah, they now have control. I mean, that's so freaking crazy. Because it's a bunch of amateurs. If people don't remember from last week, it's a bunch of amateurs talking to this spacecraft, and they interpreted the now defunct programming language that it talked, and we're able to communicate with it, and they should be bringing it back into orbit and everything. It's just, that's crazy. So
awesome. How old am I going to be in 2035, I wonder?
Was 2035?
This is the Mars thing. I want to be around when they land on Mars. I want to be around when they land on Mars.
I think the question is so Musk says he wants to go to Mars first, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah, totally.
Will that be before 2035?
It's
that
possible.
Will be interesting.
It's possible.
You will be a bit older. So we're almost at 2015. So that's like 20 years from now. So you'll be up there, man. You'll be near retirement age.
Well, I don't know. They've just increased the retirement age here in Sydney.
Oh, right.
Australia. So, Yep. I'll still be working like a dog.
Yeah.
Oh, well. That's all right. All right, dude. Our time's up.
Is it? No, yeah. We're way over.
15 minutes over.
Was there anything else that we should mention this week?
Oh, I don't know.
Well, we didn't talk about self-driving cars, but the Code Conference, they revealed the Google self-driving car. I'm super excited about that, personally. I think that's going to be huge.
Yeah, whatever.
You didn't see that?
No,
I think from an electronics perspective, that has a lot of interesting instrumentation.
Yeah, of course. From a technical aspect, it's about as practical as the solar roadway.
Yeah. Another one was the we talked last week about Mexico versus China, and there was actually a New York Times article about that as well.
Right.
So people can check that out as well. I'll put these in the notes. And I think...
Sweet.
Yeah, that's probably about it, right?
That's
okay, well, I guess we'll have stuff next week. I do have a guest on the line for next week, so I don't have confirmation yet, but if not, it'll just be you and me again, man.
That's fine.
All right.
Yep.
Well, we'll talk to you guys next week.
Catch you next time.